I mean, you'll see a change in everything when you start waking up to everything, because this is about everything. Going among this, Thomas Jefferson then said, I do not take a single newspaper nor read one a month, and I feel myself infinitely the happier for it. See, now, if you also just cut off that part, the happier for it, he feels himself infinitely. You can think that perhaps if you're not putting all your thoughts and attention toward the mainstream media, toward these external influences, and you start looking at yourself, you start listening more to yourself rather than by others, rather than by these other institutions. So, as ironic as it is, you hear me and I'm telling you to not hear me. This is the job here, because many people will tell you to follow them because it's their job to make money based on your attention, watching their content, watching and seeing what they're doing. But if you have value from it, if you gain actual value from it yourself, then there's a reason to watch it, right? But are you gaining that similar value when you watch the mainstream media? I don't think so. So he's saying he feels himself infinitely. So he's more in touch with his emotions, perhaps more in touch with his nature, but he says the happier for it. And we know how we can become the happiest. It is through health, it is through aligning ourselves to these forces and then making sure that they work out in our favor. Like, let's say we want something, we make sure that we align our life so that way that all can manifest in such a way. Quote, the cornerstone of democracy rests on the foundation of an educated electorate. A quote again by Thomas Jefferson. Again, showing you the importance of education, of knowledge, of understanding, and of understanding reasoning. Right? Because you have to understand reasoning if you want to reason, but simply by having understanding, you likely do have a better ability to reason. You likely have more common sense then because of that reasoning. So I mean, if real good government relies on people, being educated, having knowledge, as it says here, then like, okay, well, why is it that every government starts out with education and ends up without? Is it that the nature of government itself violates the innate natural knowledge that exists within the universe? Because that's what they try to find it on, right? The best of the best governments is founded on natural rights and the natural law, but it still has a twist to things. Because, like I said, they write things down, they back things by force, they tell you to do this, and they give you, I mean, like, they still founded the government to where, through time, the president may choose what to do. Through time, the magistrator chooses what to do. So what if those people are corrupt? And then they say, okay, well then rebel against them. Well, what if people can't rebel? What if people don't know how to rebel? What if they're kept in the dark from rebelling? What if everything is just kept under the dark? Because that's where we are now. So you can maybe say that, oh, we can fix democracy. But if you see how this natural cycle happens, even in the best of governments, as we've seen in the cycles that we've demonstrated, that it's through natural law that we're going to seek our most optimum health and optimum environment. For who is the ultimate educator anyway? I mean, it even says it by this quote. Someone of a similar time period, by the way, Thomas Paine, says, quote, man must go back to nature for information. To be informed, I may add to that, right? Because if you are seeking information, you are seeking to be informed. You are seeking to be educated. You are seeking to have the knowledge to go about in the world for your actions. It's thinking before doing. You don't acquire knowledge for nothing. You acquire knowledge to do something about it. Now, many people perhaps do acquire knowledge just to show off to other people, have their ego, whatever, but I think it would be better to seek knowledge that is actually going to help you within your life. And not to harp on it, but natural law is something that literally has to do with your life. Something that helps you attract what you want within your life. quote, "Those who expect to reap the blessings of freedom must, like men, undergo the fatigues of supporting it." A quote by Thomas Paine talking about the effort that it takes in order to secure the freedom of the people. Okay, because this is, right, of the people, for the people, then we are the people. So we cannot be sitting back, especially if there's tyranny now, especially if we want to take control of our health, especially if we want to become happier, no matter any of these equations, no matter what, if you agree with me or not, you have all these angles to take into consideration, and yet they're all connected to one another. Okay, so like you can disagree with this one thing, and I'll say, well, this is connected to that, in which you agree with that, but yet you don't agree with this, and that's where I can get you and say, okay, well, we can get this whole picture from looking at this whole nature that exists. So, he's saying that those who expect to reap the blessings of freedom, so the benefits of living in a free state. It's not just dangerous, right? It's dangerous to those, especially of those who have been living in a peaceful state of slavery. It's dangerous to them, like, oh, I can't risk this happening. I can't risk this person doing that because they don't want to defend themselves. They don't want to put the effort into doing so, even though that would give them more freedom. So it's like they're giving them a sacrifice from this to themselves, and it's actually doing them more harm than good. And so it's pressing down on them like a weight, which is why all those things are starting to become limits upon their lives. So he's saying to actually receive the benefits of freedom, of this natural law, it must, like men, undergo the fatigues of supporting it. Okay, we must undergo the fatigues of supporting it. There will be ups and there will be lows. It is natural. There will be attacks. There will be distractions. It is natural. It is part of trying to get these benefits. If we want to keep those benefits, if we want to keep the nature, keep the beauty of the world, all that we love, all that connects us to the world, then we must be willing to go out and support it, literally go out and support it. Now, how out of your way should you do to support it? Well, in today's era, it becomes harder to go out of your way, because you literally have to go out of here, out of that, out of this, and out of your work and out of this time, and you have so many outs to get just to do something, and therefore it's creating all these limits to actually do it, when in reality, if we are among nature, it's much easier to just go about and do it. Once you eliminate some of those boundaries, at least one at a time, little boundaries can make the biggest difference. So it's about targeting that, right? It's like adding in the right foods. It's like removing the foods that don't serve you. Just one by one, little things can make a very big difference, especially at the end of the day. Quote, "But such is the irresistible nature of truth that all it asks and all it wants is the liberty of appearing." A quote by Thomas Paine, again, talking about this expression from nature. And, I did a podcast on this too, the law of nature's attraction. It's just sort of my own twist on it, because we have this attraction to nature, but the truth we also have an attraction to. And it also attracts to us. Okay, may you say, because we are living in truth, we are living among freedom. We're just choosing if we want to accept it, embrace it, and actually utilize it within our lives. This is the law. The laws of nature is choosing what do we do with this information at hand. Looking at this as a law point of view, that's what it does, and it's understanding the truth by, yes, what is right, but what is wrong, but also that this truth exists, and it's up to us if we want to put it into reality, no matter how hard it can be to do so. So it has this urge to appear because it's just in our society and can never leave. It can never leave. But it could be suppressed. So it has this urge of appearing. This liberty, this freedom is this like growing urge, especially among people who realize the state of slavery, for example, right? They're going to feel this urge more than ever, going to be like, oh my gosh, it's pulling on us. We need to take it. We need to grab the rope, and we need to bring it with us so that the freedom lives with us. And that's the thing, is it shouldn't be this long grasp for change. It should be something that's here right now, and something that's not that hard to attain, being that we are all free all the time, no matter what. But the belief is actually setting that mentality. It's setting the illusion that, no, it is something that is limiting your life. You are not free unless it's written on a piece of paper. This is what's going on behind people's minds. Even if you agree with this and you disagree with other things, this is actually what's going on behind people's minds, and they don't realize it. Okay? They don't realize that there's illusions in place, so many illusions that control people's lives. So people can agree, but they can also miss some very important details, and I'm sure I do too sometimes, which is why we hold each other accountable. As it says by this quote, "A body of men holding themselves accountable to nobody ought not to be trusted by anybody," a quote by Thomas Paine. And you have to question, how much do presidents, how much do people in power want you questioning them? Do they want you questioning them? Does the media want you questioning their narrative? Because that will tell it right there. I'm telling you, yes, you can question me all you want. You should hold me accountable so I go toward the right direction, so I do the right thing. And so I'm not just saying that so I could be trusted by this quote, but this quote is just explaining the moral ethics, the reasonings behind why I want you to hold me accountable, why I want you to ask questions of me, and why you should want people to ask questions of you too if you're not scared and you're not of this left or right brain imbalance. Again, it's the insecurity that often forms this power that be. Okay, so it says here, quote, "To argue with a person who has renounced the use of reason is like administering medicine to the dead," a quote by Thomas Paine. So saying that if you are talking to somebody who doesn't have the ability to reason, right? They're not using this human ability that they have with willpower. They're not using this ability that they could very well use because they are born to have it and use it to their full potential, to discover their own destiny, their own creation, the own magic, essentially, because what we create is essentially like magic. I mean, look at the technology we have. It's amazing stuff. And so when people don't have the ability to reason, and they maybe don't have as much of reason to, they don't have much of the ability to understand, then it's like, what are you working with? You're working with somebody who's like dead consciousness. You're working with a machine. You can't reason with a machine. You can't. It doesn't work like that. You'd have to program it, right? And these people perhaps have been programmed their whole lives by other things, right? But you can also look at this like, are you trying to convince your dog of doing a math test? It's not entirely possible. So somebody who doesn't necessarily have that utilization of reason, or they're not using it, so they haven't practiced the utilization of it, it's going to be hard to argue with them. It's going to be hard to even have a debate or have a conversation where you're trying to use reason, because they either may not listen or may not comprehend it. So, it's a level of them being open, and stuff like that, to even using their reasoning potential. Because we can teach people how to reason. Even, I'm sure, quotes like these can help people reason. I'm sure many speakers, motivational speakers, can help people reason by connecting the dots and helping them reach an understanding and say, this is the reason behind this, hence that's why you create reasoning out of understanding reasons. So then perhaps we're administering medicine to those who need it by reasoning with those who are open to it. So think of that like this, opposite of the quote. You're giving medicine to people by reasoning with them, by understanding where they come from. Okay, so while that context is not often seen with this quote, it gives us a good light on things, and the fact that we should seek to use our willpower and our consciousness with one another as we ought to do as human beings. Otherwise, if we're not using our reasoning and we have other people trying to reason with us, what good are we going to do one another if we're not open to one another? What good are we going to do to one another if nobody is wanting to reason or understand? They don't see the value in it. Now, going back to the nature of government, since this is essential as we see. Some have so confounded society with government as to leave little or no distinction between them, whereas they are no only different, but have different origins. Society is produced by our wants, and government by our wickedness. The former promotes our happiness positively by uniting our affections, the latter negatively by restraining our vices. The one encourages intercourse, the other creates distinctions. The first is a patron, the last is a punisher. This is a quote by Thomas Paine. You see a very similar quote by George Washington saying government is like fire and that it should be feared and should never be left irresponsible. Okay, so I mean, how do you assure that in the 21st century? You have to have many accountable measures in place, and then through time, it seems almost impossible when there's millions of people detached from very few people. You'd think, oh, the millions of people could keep them accountable. That's millions of people. That means there's going to be more people speaking out, which means more people, then there's not going to do anything. And you have this cycle, again, that you just see no matter what. And it's a very harmful cycle where people are unconscious. They're not using their human ability. They're not seeking nature. They have no understanding of natural law because they're stuck in a man's law prison. So we see here that what he's saying is society and government are two different things. Society is by our wants, and government by this bad side, this insecurity, this wickedness, he says. You know, you want to say the wicked witch, and perhaps witches are people who turned bad or so forth. I don't know. But he says the former, and what he means by the former is society. He says society promotes our happiness positively, which I think using those words are very specific and very effective, because if you understand right and wrong objectively, you understand that right is a positive expression and wrong is a negative expression of natural law. And so he says positively, though, by uniting our affections, uniting our emotions. You know, what is our most emotional well-being attached to? You have to question. Is it attached to some people that we don't know? No, who don't even show us affection anyways. No, it's attached to our families. It's attached to nature. Okay, and then he says the negative, which is government, a negative expression, is by restraining, notice, limiting our vices. Okay, and he says the one who encourages intercourse, which is society, left to their own nature, they should reproduce, they should talk to one another, they should be self-sustainable, right? While the other ones creates distinctions, saying you do this, you do that, and don't do that. And it's basically limits on your freedom. That's all it is. And limits on natural law, which is dangerous in many regards, being that it is then contributing to a negative expression. It says the first is a patron and the last is a punisher. So it's going to punish you for not following its laws, even though they're not natural laws. They're going to punish you for following laws that don't even exist within nature itself, which is why they want to recreate it, which is why they're at war with it. And saying the first is patron, which is society, is meaning society will work with you. You know, you work with it, it'll work with you. This law of attraction applies everywhere. So, you know, if you work with government, they may or may not work with you because they may not be in your best interest. That's not society. That's just a few people who are detached from the rest of the world and likely denatured as it is. So, do you think they're going to be affectionate, or do you think they're going to punish you? You know, for speaking out or questioning their agenda, even though you just want to hold them accountable even. So you have to keep that in mind. Now, this is all a quote by Thomas Paine. He even has a book, and I have a lot of these books actually myself. One of them is called The Rights of Man. So he really likes to get down also to the natural rights that we have. Quote, I offer nothing more than simple facts, plain arguments, and common sense. A quote by Thomas Paine, and this reinforces what I've been saying, where this must be a simple premises that we promote within this movement of Nita, of Nature's the Answer, is simply the premises. It's simple, it's easy, it's a plain argument, right? You want to ask about this, you want to ask about that. What are we supposed to do as human beings? What is the natural way of living? And you may make arguments to say life isn't like that anymore. Well, it doesn't matter what you think when there's an objective right and objective wrong. Does it matter what you think when there's natural law existent? Because what you think is likely what got us the laws. They're all just opinions of politicians. Okay, so it should be simple. Simple facts. If we make it any more complex, there will be division. There will be argument. And then plain arguments, right? Is just keeping it simple. Doesn't have to be like, how did we go on the moon? Is that real? Do you think that really is actually a beneficial talk to have about the state of our world and changing it for the better? If anything, that's a distraction, okay? And then we have common sense, where that perhaps was an example of common sense, is what is more important and what is not. What should we do now and what should we not? Taking the moment to do what is right for that moment. Different things upon you bring a lot of understanding, a lot of critical thinking, a lot of reasoning together, and you start to form this common sense. Natural law at best is the formation of common sense when you are left to this self-sustainable model. Quote, a long habit of not thinking a thing wrong gives it a superficial appearance of being right. A quote by Thomas Paine, talking about being stuck in your belief system. Shall you think that your belief system is so right and nothing can change it? So even if it's entirely wrong and has no basis in objective right, you will think that it's right because you gave it the superficial appearance of being right. Okay, so he's saying a long habit of something is going to likely condition you into that thing. So in this particular scenario, he's saying a long habit of not thinking a thing wrong. So not thinking anything is wrong, there's no objective wrong, gives it a superficial appearance of being right. Like, oh, this is right. Oh, no, that's right to do. It's fine. But no, there is a right and a wrong decision. You know, they want to say, some people want to say respect is a two-way path. There's a lot of symbolicness with that too. So understand these quotes, understand this philosophy that has been passed down for generations already. Shall we want to seek further innovation in the coming generations, it would be important to understand the innovation of the past generations. Okay, we can only move forward. We're moving forward with every urge of truth that is given to us by nature, right? Nature is giving us these tools of truth, and I think now we can decide what is the ultimate truth given looking at all this past and all this information and all these people and all these governments. We're in an age where it's mass amounts, where it can cause confusion, can cause a lot of emotional ups and downs, it can cause a lot of barriers to cross, but once you do, you can actually understand more than ever, perhaps, shall you wish to do so, especially with more foods now than ever, with more different types of sensories now than ever to open your mind. I mean, we have a lot of stuff nowadays to help us think about a lot of stuff. So are you using it? Quote, the most formidable weapon against errors of every kind is reason. Okay, a quote by Thomas Paine again. Formidable. Okay, the most formidable. So what's going to help form this world into the one that we want to? It's going to be reason. And we can use it against errors. We can use it for promoting right. Obviously, we don't want to promote errors ever in any form. Okay, and so it's about using our reason, just like as I do when I go on with each quote. Quote, we have it in our power to begin the world over again. A quote by Thomas Paine, also reinforcing this idea that people have the power to decide what they want to do in this life. They have the power to decide what needs to be done. And so shall we use that power, we can change the world in a way however we'd like. We could begin the world over again. It could be an entirely different world overnight, over the next week. Shall we explore and represent and talk and really get these ideas out there of simple ideas. The more simple it can be, the better for this complex world. And there's going to be people that will want to push it to complex limits. And we're going to say, hey, step back, man. Relax. Sit back in nature. Meditate. Take a deep breath. Sleep. do the things that you're supposed to do. You shouldn't have to worry about this. Now, you are trying to worry about this, but come on. I mean, the world works in your favor. Just work with it. Do your thing, live your life, have a family and stuff like that. And a lot of people will probably either overestimate or underestimate that statement from me, I'm sure. But just know that you have the power to move the world in any direction shall you choose, with the majority, with the society of people that we have here in the world. An actual majority, by the way. I mean, it just gives way to the entire world. It's not even majority. The government works through majority vote, which is not even of the people, it's of these politicians. And even that seems very unfair, because it isn't fair. It's never entirely fair. It's man's law. It's something that innately is immoral, something innately that doesn't work fully or through all the generations. So we have to begin the world over again in the way that we want. And as you even see by this picture, it is by following the way of nature, following the way of the sun, the way of life, okay, the way that we are supposed to be. Quote, lead, follow, or get out of the way, a quote by Thomas Paine. And this is very true. It's either you lead, or you follow, or you get out of the way because you're not contributing to anything. This is what he's saying, like when you are passionately driven and you're going toward your goal, okay, just looking at an individual point of view, you're going to lead or you're going to follow because you believe the cause is just, and perhaps, by following me, I guess you can say, I'm still saying that you are the leader, so it's like a lead-follow situation. It's a perfect balance between the two. It's not putting all your blind belief and dependence on me. It's saying, okay, I can have power myself as I'm supposed to, as I am, and I will use it, and we're going to use it together, so we just have to unite, right? But this idea also of getting out of the way is like, okay, you're not going to help the cause or get out of the way. Well, we're still going to consider you. We want you to have a good life, We're not going to just push you out of the way. But we don't want you to also do nothing and don't stand for anything. You're going to have a destiny. If you want to have change, if you want to be a part of this great change, please, follow our lead, right? Follow our lead. Both follow and lead. Because even if you follow me, you lead a whole bunch of other people in your community and neighborhood, right? So it's like, here's the thing. A leader is always a follower, and as we know, the best leaders have been followers. So there's always going to be things that you agree with others. You don't have to purely have everything come from you. This is not an ego project. Remember, this is the left and right brain in balance. So it's also not just, well, okay, I'm not going to get involved. I'm just going to sit back and not do anything. You should get involved if it's something pertaining to the truth of the world. We're talking about the objective moral truth of the world. And we're talking about threats that exist to the very nature and the very essence of our living. So do you care about that? Because if you do, then you care about life. And if you don't care about human life, to me at least. Because you're not doing anything that is truly beneficial for it. And say, okay, you're doing the job and stuff like that. That's great. That's great. You're always contributing some way, somehow. But are you contributing to your fullest? And are you really looking at what this is objectively, what I'm presenting objectively for what it is? Because who can disagree that going to a beach or just being among nature is a beautiful, peaceful, and healing process? Who can disagree that our pharmaceutical complex has grown corrupt, or that our rights are starting to be taken away? These are things that are generally becoming more widely accepted as problems and as something we need to pay attention to the very least. Pay attention to means actually getting involved, by the way, not just sitting back watching. Okay, we can sit back and watch to an extent, but also comes a time where we may have to step in, and perhaps the time to step in is now. Don't expect other people to do it, because we need you to do it. Okay, you are just another person among all these many people. So we need you to do it because you're actually going to make an impact. And being that you know some things, and you definitely do, but other people don't, then we need your piece of the puzzle as well. Thank you for watching this video. Feel free to subscribe, like, and do whatever you wish. It's up to you. You are free in this life, and if you want to know how to change the world truly, please, I encourage you to check out my website, Nita.1. It's here for all of us, actually. It's not my website. It is my website, but it isn't. It's here for us all. We're all messengers. We're all fellow human beings. Let's change the world truly, and we can do it with Nita.1. Nature's the answer.